Ma'am, I need to see your ID.
I'm just getting gas. What's this about?
Officer, we don't need a reason. Show me your ID.
I'm a U.S. citizen and a police officer. My credentials are in the car.
Sure you are. Hands where I can see them.
You're making a serious mistake, officer.
Agent Edward Fairmont was 34 years old and 5 years into his ICE career when he approached a woman at a Shell station off Interstate 85. The encounter would last 11 minutes. It would cost him his badge, his freedom, and trigger a $5.4 million federal lawsuit. The woman pumping gas was Captain Celine Hartwell, a 15-year police veteran who commanded over 200 officers in Charlotte-Mecklenburg's Northwest Division. Fairmont's body camera captured everything: his demand for citizenship papers without reasonable suspicion, his refusal to let her identify herself, and the moment he deployed his taser on a decorated law enforcement officer standing in her own jurisdiction. 3 cameras recorded the arrest. 47 million people would eventually watch the footage. But in that moment, as Fairmont's hand moved toward his taser, he had no idea he wasn't confronting a victim. He was confronting the consequences of his own arrogance. October 28, 2023. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Shell station off Interstate 85 in Davidson County, North Carolina. Captain Celine Hartwell pulled into the gas station, weary from the 3-hour drive from her mother's home in Virginia. At 42 years old, Hartwell had spent 15 years with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, rising through the ranks to command the Northwest Division. She was decorated, respected, and known throughout her department for unshakable composure under pressure. She was also black, female, and in that moment, completely alone. Hartwell stepped out of her unmarked black sedan, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt. Nothing about her appearance suggested law enforcement. No uniform, no badge, no gun visible on her hip. She was simply a woman stopping for gas on her way home. As the pump clicked and hummed, filling her tank, Hartwell noticed a dark SUV pull up to the adjacent pump. 2 men emerged wearing tactical gear with ICE emblazoned across their vests: Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The lead agent was a white male in his early 30s, his nameplate reading Fairmont. His partner, a black man named Cole, hung back near their vehicle. "Ma'am, we need to see your identification," Fairmont announced, his tone flat and authoritative. His hand rested on his duty belt. Hartwell looked up, momentarily confused. "Excuse me? Your ID, now." It wasn't a request. What Agent Edward Fairmont didn't know, what he couldn't have known from his cursory racial profiling, was that the woman he'd just demanded papers from commanded a division of over 200 police officers. What he also didn't know was that his body camera was recording every word, as was the gas station's security system, and Hartwell's dash cam had activated the moment she parked. The dramatic irony was absolute. A federal agent demanding proof of citizenship from a police captain who outranked most officers in the region. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose the ugliest assumptions about who belongs in America, and who must constantly prove it. Hartwell's mind immediately shifted into tactical mode. 15 years of law enforcement training kicked in as she assessed the situation with practiced precision. 2 agents, one aggressive, one passive. No marked vehicles beyond the SUV. No backup visible. No apparent exigent circumstances that would justify a random pedestrian stop at a gas station. She replaced the gas nozzle slowly, buying herself seconds to think. "I'm filling up gas," Hartwell said evenly, her voice betraying none of the alarm beginning to coil in her chest. "What's the basis for this stop?" Fairmont stepped closer, invading her personal space. "We don't need a basis. ICE has broad authority. Identification? Now." Hartwell knew immigration law. She'd worked joint task forces with federal agents. She understood that while ICE possessed interior enforcement authority, that authority wasn't unlimited. Random stops required reasonable suspicion of immigration violations. Being a black woman at a gas station wasn't reasonable suspicion. It was racial profiling, pure and simple. "Are you detaining me?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "If I have to." Fairmont's hand moved to his radio. Last chance before this gets complicated. Behind him, Agent Cole shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Years later, he would testify that he'd felt uneasy from the beginning, but deferred to his senior partner's judgment, a decision that would haunt him. Hartwell calculated her options. She could refuse, assert her Fourth Amendment rights, and risk escalation. She could comply, retrieve her police credentials, and end this immediately. Or she could try to de-escalate verbally, using the skills she taught in her department's crisis intervention training. "I'm a U.S. citizen," Hartwell said calmly, choosing her words carefully. "I'm also a police officer. My credentials are in my vehicle." "Sure you are," Fairmont interrupted, his skepticism dripping with condescension. "And I'm the president. Hands where I can see them." Agent Cole finally spoke up. "Edward, maybe we should—" "Stay out of this, Crossford." Fairmont's focus never left Hartwell. "Ma'am, you're being evasive. That gives me reasonable suspicion to believe you're unlawfully present in the United States." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Hartwell felt the cold, familiar fury that came with being reduced to a stereotype. The same fury she'd swallowed when white colleagues assumed she was a diversity hire, when senior officers questioned whether she'd earned her promotions, when citizens demanded to speak to her supervisor because surely she couldn't be in charge. But this was different. This was a federal agent, armed and aggressive, essentially telling her that her citizenship was conditional on her ability to produce documentation on demand. "I'm not being evasive," Hartwell said, her voice hardening slightly. "I'm asking you to articulate the legal basis for this stop. That's my constitutional right." "Your right," Fairmont scoffed, his contempt now fully visible. "You want rights? Show me proof you have rights." The words hung in the air, a statement so staggering in its implication that for a moment Hartwell couldn't process it. Proof you have rights. As if rights weren't inherent. As if citizenship were something to be performed, proven, validated by the correct paperwork shown to the correct authority figure at the correct moment. Later, that single sentence would be played in courtrooms and congressional hearings, dissected by legal scholars and civil rights advocates. But in that moment, Hartwell understood with perfect clarity that she was in danger. "I'm going to get my wallet from my back pocket," she announced slowly, telegraphing her movements. "I'm retrieving my identification, as you've requested." Her hand moved slowly toward her back pocket. She'd made this movement thousands of times, reaching for her badge, her credentials, her wallet. It was muscle memory. "Hands up!" Fairmont's hand flew to his weapon. "Get your hands up now!" "I'm getting my ID like you asked." Hartwell's voice rose for the first time, adrenaline spiking through her system. The contradiction was maddening. Produce ID, but don't reach for ID. Comply, but don't move. Prove your rights. But any attempt to do so will be interpreted as threatening. Agent Cole took a half step forward, his instinct finally overriding his deference. "Edward." But it was already too late. What happened next occurred in seconds, but would later be analyzed frame by investigators, attorneys, and civil rights experts. Fairmont grabbed Hartwell's wrist as she reached for her wallet. The grip was sudden, forceful, designed to control. Hartwell pulled back instinctively. It wasn't defiance. It was a trained defensive maneuver, the automatic response of someone who'd spent years learning how to break holds and maintain personal safety. But Fairmont interpreted the movement as resistance, as a threat. He drew his taser. "Get on the ground," he shouted, his voice sharp with adrenaline. "I'm a police captain," Hartwell yelled back, her authority finally breaking through the fear. "Charlotte Mecklenburg, PD. My badge is in the car." Fairmont wasn't listening anymore. He saw a black woman refusing compliance. He saw defiance. He saw justification. He deployed the taser. 50,000 volts coursed through Hartwell's body. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, every muscle seizing simultaneously, her nervous system short-circuiting, her body collapsing against the side of her sedan. The taser barbs embedded in her back, just below her shoulder blade and above her hip, continued delivering current in 5-second cycles. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. She could only experience the violation of her body, her autonomy, her humanity. Bystanders at the gas station froze in horror. A woman filling her minivan grabbed her phone and started recording. An elderly man shouted something, but his words were lost in the chaos. Fairmont wasn't finished. He forced Hartwell to the ground, her cheek pressed against the asphalt still warm from the afternoon sun. He wrenched her arms behind her back, applying zip ties with practiced efficiency, the plastic bit into her wrists. "Suspect is secured," Fairmont radioed to his supervisor, breathing hard. "Uncooperative female, refused to provide documentation, resisted arrest." Hartwell lay motionless, taser barbs still embedded in her back, processing the impossible reality. She was a police captain, face down at a gas station, arrested for the crime of being black in public. Agent Crossford Cole stood frozen, watching his partner secure the zip ties. Something about the encounter had felt wrong from the beginning, but now, seeing the woman motionless on the ground, that wrongness crystallized into alarm. "Edward," Cole said quietly, "we need to check her vehicle." "We'll inventory it after transport," Fairmont replied, still catching his breath from the adrenaline surge. "No! Now! We need to check now!" Something in Cole's tone cut through. Fairmont stepped back, and Cole approached Hartwell's sedan. The driver's door was still open from when she'd exited to pump gas. Cole leaned in, scanning the interior. The police credentials sat in the center console, impossible to miss. A leather badge holder flipped open. Badge number 2847, gleaming under the late afternoon light. The identification card beside it. Captain Celine A. Hartwell, Commander, Northwest Division, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. Cole's face went ashen. "Edward, we have a problem." He held up the badge and ID, his hand trembling slightly. Fairmont snatched them, his confidence fracturing as he read the credentials. Police Captain, Charlotte Mecklenburg, a major metropolitan department with over 1,800 sworn officers. "This could be fake," Fairmont said weakly, but his voice betrayed his doubt. Real panic was beginning to seep in. Hartwell, still prone on the pavement, spoke through gritted teeth. The taser barbs pulled at her skin with every breath. "Call my department. Badge number 2847. They'll confirm. And while you're at it, you might want to call your supervisor, because you just committed assault on a law enforcement officer. Everything you did is on camera. All of it." Cole was already dialing. His hands shook as he navigated to Charlotte Mecklenburg PD's main dispatch number. The conversation was brief, clipped, professional. Badge number 2847, Captain Celine Hartwell, Northwest Division Commander. The dispatcher's response was immediate. "That's Captain Hartwell. Is she okay? What's her status?" Cole closed his eyes. "We need to speak with your duty commander." "Now!" The next 20 minutes transformed the gas station into a command post. The CMPD duty commander escalated immediately to Chief of Police Crossford Thompson, who was in the middle of a community policing presentation when his phone rang. 2 words into the call, Thompson's expression darkened. He left the podium mid-sentence. The first CMPD patrol unit arrived within 12 minutes, lights and sirens cutting through the quiet Saturday afternoon. Then another. Then a Davidson County Sheriff's deputy, responding to the multi-agency notification. Then two unmarked sedans carrying FBI Special Agents Keisha Morton and James Sullivan from the Civil Rights Division. The FBI agents' presence wasn't coincidental. They'd been monitoring ICE operations in the region for 3 months following a pattern of complaints investigation. Multiple reports of aggressive tactics, racial profiling, and questionable stops had triggered a federal review. Now they had a case study in real time. Paramedics carefully removed the taser barbs from Hartwell's back. The wounds bled. 2 puncture marks that would scar. They offered transport to the hospital, but Hartwell refused, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. She wasn't leaving this scene until she understood exactly what would happen next. Agent Fairmont attempted to explain himself to Special Agent Morton, words tumbling out in defensive justification. She was evasive. She refused to comply with lawful orders. I had reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion of what? Morton interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. Being black at a gas station? That's not reasonable suspicion, Agent Fairmont. That's racial profiling. And everything you just did, the stop, the taser deployment, the arrest, is captured on body camera. Your body camera. Fairmont's face was drained of color. Morton continued relentlessly. You demanded proof of citizenship without articulable suspicion. You refused to allow her to identify herself. You deployed a taser on a nonviolent individual attempting to comply with your contradictory commands. And you arrested a police captain in her own jurisdiction. She paused, letting each charge land. We're seizing your body cameras, both of you, and the gas station's security footage. This entire encounter is now evidence in a federal civil rights investigation. Within 3 hours, the FBI had secured every piece of video evidence. Agent Fairmont's body camera showed the encounter from his perspective. The initial approach, the demand for ID, Hartwell's calm attempts to de-escalate, and the moment he deployed the taser. Agent Cole's camera captured the same scene from a different angle, including his visible discomfort and attempts to intervene. The gas station's security system had recorded everything from overhead, showing the entire interaction in chilling detail. Hartwell's dashcam, automatically activated when she parked, provided a third perspective. A civilian bystander's cell phone video, posted to social media within an hour, was already accumulating views. The Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General received formal notification by 6 p.m. By 8 p.m., a preliminary review had been initiated. By Monday morning, 72 hours after the incident, Agent Edward Fairmont was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Agent Crossford Cole was reassigned to desk duty, not as punishment, but to separate him from the direct chain of command during the inquiry. Their field office supervisor, who had authorized the patrol pattern in that area over the previous 3 months, was also suspended. That patrol pattern would later become a critical piece of evidence. ICE operations had disproportionately targeted areas with high minority populations, generating stops that rarely resulted in actual immigration violations. It was fishing expedition policing, and Hartwell had been caught in the net. Captain Hartwell sat in her living room that Saturday evening, still processing the trauma, when she made the call. David Brennan, one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in the Southeast, answered on the second ring. David, it's Celine Hartwell. I need your help. Celine? What happened? They tased me, David. Her voice was eerily calm, the shock insulating her from the full emotional impact. ICE agents, at a gas station. They tased me for being black at a gas station. while I was trying to show them my police credentials. Brennan, who had successfully litigated 3 major excessive force cases, recognized the significance immediately. "Tell me everything, and don't leave out any details." The lawsuit preparation began that night. The body camera footage leaked on November 3rd, 6 days after the incident. 11 minutes of video that captured everything: Fairmont's aggressive approach, his demand for proof of rights, Hartwell's attempts to identify herself, the Taser deployment, and her collapse. The footage went viral within hours. 47 million views across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Cable news networks played the video on loop. Legal analysts dissected every moment. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The image of Captain Celine Hartwell, a decorated police officer, being tased and arrested while trying to identify herself, became a national symbol of immigration enforcement gone wrong, of racial profiling embedded in federal policy, of authority abused. David Brennan filed the federal civil rights lawsuit on December 12, 2023, in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of North Carolina. The 47-page complaint was methodical and devastating, citing 42 U.S.C. part of 1983 for civil rights violations. Count 1 alleged Fourth Amendment violations: unlawful seizure without reasonable suspicion, excessive force, and false arrest. Count 2 alleged 14th Amendment violations: racial profiling and denial of equal protection under the law. Count 3 alleged assault and battery under state tort law. Named defendants included Agent Edward Fairmont personally, Agent Crossford Cole, the ICE Charlotte Field Office, and the United States Department of Homeland Security. The complaint demanded compensatory damages for physical injuries, emotional distress, and violation of constitutional rights, plus punitive damages to deter future misconduct. Medical exhibits documented Hartwell's injuries: taser puncture wounds requiring surgical removal of embedded barb fragments, permanent nerve damage in her lower back, causing chronic pain, and ongoing physical therapy. Psychological evaluations by Dr. Sarah Kim, a trauma specialist, diagnosed acute stress disorder with symptoms including intrusive memories, hypervigilance, and severe anxiety when approached by unfamiliar authority figures. The lawsuit transformed Hartwell from victim to plaintiff, from powerless to empowered. She was taking back control. 14 months of depositions, discovery, and negotiations culminated in a settlement announced on January 15, 2025. The United States government agreed to pay $5.4 million, one of the largest civil rights settlements in North Carolina history. The figure broke down to $2.1 million in compensatory damages, $2.5 million in punitive damages, and $800,000 in attorney fees and costs. But the settlement was only the beginning of consequences. Agent Edward Fairmont was terminated from Immigration and Customs Enforcement on March 3, 2024. The Department of Justice filed criminal charges under 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Fairmont pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence: 18 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and permanent revocation of his law enforcement certification. He would never work in law enforcement again. Agent Crossford Cole received a formal written reprimand, but retained his position after cooperating fully with federal investigators. His testimony proved critical in establishing the pattern of racial profiling that preceded the incident. He later transferred to ICE's Office of Professional Responsibility, where he helped develop new training protocols. The ICE Charlotte Field Office underwent complete restructuring. The supervisor who authorized the problematic patrol patterns was demoted and transferred to a non-operational role. New policies required documented, articulable reasonable suspicion for all pedestrian stops. Mandatory bias training became required quarterly. An external oversight board, including civil rights advocates, now reviewed enforcement patterns for discriminatory impact. Captain Celine Hartwell returned to duty on April 28, 2024, after 6 months of medical and administrative leave. The physical scars had healed, but the psychological impact remained. She underwent counseling, processed her trauma, and emerged with a new mission: ensuring no one else would experience what she had endured. In November 2026, Hartwell was promoted to Deputy Chief of Police, overseeing training and community relations. She became a national voice on law enforcement accountability, testifying before Congress about racial bias in federal immigration enforcement and developing model policies for preventing discriminatory policing. The legislative impact extended beyond her department. On July 14, 2025, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper signed the Hartwell Act into law. The legislation required all state and local law enforcement agencies to document the race, ethnicity, and national origin of individuals stopped or detained by federal immigration authorities within their jurisdictions. The data would be compiled into a public database, allowing researchers and advocates to identify patterns of discriminatory enforcement. The Shell station where the encounter occurred installed a small historical marker in October 2025, placed near Pump 7 where Hartwell had been arrested. The plaque read simply, "On this site, October 28, 2023, Captain Celine Hartwell was wrongfully detained and subjected to excessive force by federal agents." Her courage in pursuing justice led to systemic reforms in immigration enforcement and the passage of the Hartwell Act. This marker stands as a reminder that accountability and justice must prevail over abuse of authority. In a televised interview 18 months after the incident, Hartwell reflected on what the experience had taught her. "I spent 15 years in law enforcement believing the system worked if you just followed the rules, if you respected authority, if you did everything right. That day at the gas station taught me what millions of Americans already knew, that for many people, the system isn't designed to work for them. It's designed to profile them, to question them, to demand they prove they belong in their own country." She paused, her expression hardening with resolve. "My badge saved me. My attorney saved me. My skin color almost killed me. But millions of others don't have those protections. This case was never just about me. It was about every person who's been told to prove they have rights, as if rights are conditional, as if citizenship is something you perform on demand for the right authority figure." The documentary closed not with triumphalism, but with a sobering truth. Justice served is not justice prevented. Captain Celine Hartwell won her case. The system was forced to pay. But across America, countless others still wait for their moment of vindication, if it ever comes at all.